Oh, well, it's been my pleasure to be serving at Shasta Bible College alongside these two. Both of them have been a great blessing to me. And Dan came. He has been a pastor in, I think, mostly Conservative Baptist Association churches, although I don't know about before that. But
Independent church.
yeah, and independent churches. But he's been a man greatly used by God. People have been blessed greatly by his ministry. Our students all love him as a teacher, and Dan and his dear wife Linda kind of team teach together. She serves alongside him in a tremendous way. I had the privilege of working with Linda in the same office at Shasta Bible College. Actually, before that, I actually had her as a student. So when they came to Shasta Bible College, Linda said, "You know what? I'm going to finish my bachelor's degree." And she was a good student too. But she served us for many years and just retired from the position of financial aid officer at Shasta Bible College. But they've been wanting to spend more time on the mission field, and this is one of the reasons that I have such a tremendous appreciation for them. One of the areas that Shasta Bible College has always been deeply involved in is in preparing people for the mission field. And that's such an important part of our ministry, and Dan and Linda have really headed up that program along with some other areas of responsibility that they have. So we just appreciate you guys. Glad you could be with us this morning. So God bless you. Come on up and share with us what God's laid on your hearts.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gunn. And thank you, Shasta Community Church. It is great to be here. We have been here over the past 22 years from time to time, and you've always been a great encouragement to us. Your former pastor, Keith Stone, was a long-term friend of mine. I think the first time I met Keith was he showed me our first apartment that we rented at Dallas Seminary. He was a student at Dallas when I was a student at Dallas, anticipating marrying my wife, and he showed us the apartment, and that was my introduction to Keith Stone. And then when I came to California in 1975, he pastored a church not too far from where we ended up for about 20 years. And so we continued in that friendship. And then when God led us to North Valley Baptist Church and across the street, Shasta Bible College, lo and behold, Keith was there. And that friendship continued, and I saw Dr. Brown again. I knew him way back 50 years ago when I started the church in Lake of the Pines. His mom and dad moved in next door to us and were part of that church. And so Eric was just a little guy, and we're thankful for all those relationships that go back over so many years. And I became first acquainted with Shasta Bible College through Dr. Nick. And Dr. Nick used to come to the Conservative Baptist get-together for pastors from Northern California and from Nevada and present the school every year. And so it was a privilege to get to know him, and he knows everybody, and I've been around a long time too, and we shared a lot of friends from across the country and a lot of connections. So very thankful for all of that, and very thankful for the privilege of being involved in the ministry of Shasta Bible College in one sense, for about 22 years, because I started teaching and having a presence on campus going back to the time when I had the privilege of serving as what was called the lead pastor after Pastor Blue at North Valley Baptist for about 2.5 years. It was during that time that Linda discovered the school, and as Dr. Gunn pointed out, she figured out, which she's prone to do, she could finally finish her degree. She has a PhD degree. That's putting hubby through, and has an actual diploma from Dallas Seminary. But she sacrificed the last year of education to come alongside me and do my typing and work at the seminary. And along with my working at the seminary too, we were able to finish school without debt. That's unbelievable. And nobody helping us, and other than God. And he just miraculously saw to it. And we were free then to end up in California, the mission field. I thought I would end up in India or Africa. I had invitations to those countries to start seminaries there. But God directed us to Calvary Bible Church in Grass Valley, California. And we served several years in that church, in youth and Christian education, and then started a branch church 8 years ago.
When we moved to California, Dan's grandmother literally said to him, "Dan, aren't there enough sinners in Louisiana?"
And I said, "Yes, Grandma, there are plenty of sinners in Louisiana, but there are more in California."
So that's how we ended up in California. We are here today to, let's see. Is it struggling?
We want to talk about God's direction. You need right directions in life. And throughout life, that becomes very obvious. We attended our 7-year-old grandson's basketball game yesterday. Go ahead and get it up. Work on it, whatever it needs to be. Are you ready? Okay. There we are. And the right direction is really important. There were a number of times when people were going the wrong way and making goals for the other team. And my grandson did that yesterday. And he was quite disgusted with himself. Though I have to say, I was proud of it because it was a heck of a good play and a good shot. But, it's Super Bowl Sunday, and you pray that people will have the right direction today and there won't be any, what's the guy's name? Wrong Way Rickles, I think was his name. And there's a number of others that have gone the wrong way and made goals for the other team, made touchdowns for the other team. It reminds me of the story of a Cajun friend of mine. I grew up in Louisiana, so I grew up in our Cajun culture. And this Cajun man, he done got his girlfriend going to the LSU, Louisiana State University, the home of Tony the Tiger, Mike the Tiger actually was his name. I used to visit that tiger when I was a boy and talked to him in his cage. Well, he took his girlfriend to the LSU football game, and at halftime he asked her, do you understand the game, ma chérie? Well, yeah, I think so. Before the game, they flipped the quarter. During the game, everybody yells out, "Get that quarterback, get that quarterback, get that quarterback." So, you need to know the game. You have the right direction. So, may your team win in the Super Bowl today. And even though I'm a die-hard Dallas Cowboys fan, I will cheer for the 49ers today. Partly because my 3 grandsons and my son will be cheering for them, and I don't want to be adversarial. The right directions in life. I'm thankful for the direction of this church. Thank you for your support of Shasta Bible College and Graduate School over the years. Thank you for your contribution, not only in terms of monies to keep the school doing what the school has been called to do, but also your contribution of the life of this church in so many of our students over the years. Some of our excellent students have come and been a part of this fellowship, and it's been a privilege to recommend this church to them. And thank you for those in your staff, your church, that have been a part of the staff of the school as well, and for their participation. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, familiar verses. Let's rehearse it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. How many of you have known that verse by memory from the time you were a kid? Yeah. Great verses. And, the more you think about verses and memorize them and meditate upon, sometimes God gives you fresh understanding. You realize that there are 3 commandments in these verses: trust, lean, acknowledge. 3 commandments. 3 commandments to do what with? Commandments are to obey. So trust, say it with me. Trust, lean, acknowledge. Okay. Now, what else do we observe in these verses? There are three capacities. We are to trust with all of our heart. That's a capacity of emotion. Now, I realize the word heart in Hebrew can be used in a broad number of ways, but because of the juxtaposition to the other capacities that are referenced, I think there's a purposeful distinction to be made. And here I think it relates to feelings, to the heart. We are to trust the Lord with all of our heart. We are to lean not on our own understanding. What capacity could that speak to? Your mind. Ooh. So our emotions, our intellect. Now notice there's one other capacity. And acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Acknowledge Him. Don't just feel it, don't just think it, but do something with it. Do something with it. Now, why do I think in terms of those three capacities? Because the constituent elements of personality are intellect, emotion, and will. I don't find it happenstantial that the God who made us and created us in His image brings that to the forefront in these verses. We have intellect, we have emotion, and we have will. All three are important. All three are essential. It's not a one or the other. I'm the intellectual guy. I'm the emotional guy. I'm the get her done kind of guy. All those are good. But you know, you can become a wacko if you just focus on one of those. Who likes to be around Dr. Spock all the time? You know, you Trekkies understand what I'm saying. Dr. Spock's the guy with the pointed ears that, let me think about this. And, it's mind melts and mind sharing and all this kind of stuff with Dr. Spock. But, it could drive you nuts to be around somebody. And then what about somebody that's all emotion? Barney Fife, How many of you like to live with Barney Fife? I mean, he's entertaining, or was, but, I, rather than thinking of these as three separate things, think of them as concentric, intertwined circles, overlapping and intertwined circles. That's how God has made us. He's given us intellect, emotion, and will for us to engage all of those, to grow and develop in all of those areas. And some of us may be more prone or gifted in one area or another, but we can all grow and learn from each other. And that's part of the reason why God's put us together with each other, to keep stirring, to stimulating growth in relation to all those capacities, and to trust and to lean and to acknowledge. And there's a wonderful promise. So there's 3 commandments, 3 capacities, and 1 incredible promise. And what's the promise? He will direct your path. You won't make goals for the other team. If you follow God, He'll give you direction. Well, God has been faithful to give us direction along the way, and we'd like to share some of that with you. Many of you have been aware of it for 20 years or so that we've been traveling the world, and we are thankful for that. And of course, Shasta Bible College is a part of that. When God moved us from our position at North Valley Baptist Church, the door was wide open. We were already engaged at Shasta Bible College and have continued in some way or another to be involved for the last 20 more years.
We actually would like to share some stories with you today, particularly with one particular student.
And that's because these are your stories, because you've been engaged with Shasta Bible College for all these years.
Back in 2009, we had a new student come online from Kenya. His name was Anthony Juma, and Dan taught his very first class. and we were actually living someplace else, and Dan was teaching online, and he would get on the phone with Anthony and hear the chickens in the background, and Anthony got started.
I'd forgotten that. That's when we were in Colorado, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, 10 years later, Anthony finished that degree. He actually kept going, 1 or 2 classes every semester, and he finished his Bachelor of Arts in Bible and Theology in December of 2019. And his very last class was with Dan. So right before he graduated, Anthony and Dan were on the phone, and Anthony says, "We're having a big youth conference. The kids are out of school in December here in Kenya. Why don't you come over and help us with this youth conference?"
And I really didn't know Anthony real well. I didn't know his ministry situation real well. I did not realize who I was teaching. You know, he was pastoring a church of about 500 people. He'd been in that church for 20 years. And he was part of an association and one of the leaders in an association of about 128 churches at that time.
So Dan says, "Sure." And he gets on a plane and he goes to Kenya. And so
I'm driving in the airport with Anthony, and I said, okay.
well, let me just tell you.
Okay.
Right before Dan left.
We interrupt each other all
Yes,
the time.
it's fine. Right before Dan left, he goes, Anthony says, "Well, I'm planning on coming to walk in the spring, 2020. And Dan goes, "Well, I wonder if he's really going to make it. I mean, that's a lot of money." He said, "Why don't I ask Dr. Nick if I can take his diploma to him, since he was actually graduating that weekend." So Dan actually took his diploma and gown to him. There he is, receiving his Shasta Bible College degree. I might need a help there. It's not clicking.
Right here. Oh, sorry.
There, or you went 2.
I went twice. Okay. Okay, well, so Dan goes, and there's the youth conference. Okay, now tell about the youth conference.
Okay. We presented his diploma to him at his request in his church with his parents and his wife and kids and friends there. But the youth conference, I'm okay, Anthony, we're doing a youth conference. How many speakers are there for this conference? He said, 1. Okay. Well, I'm thinking, okay, 1 speaker, but, probably speak 3 times a day, for several days. And I said, well, okay, how many times am I speaking? He said, well, from about 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and there'll be 7 sessions each day. And I'm going, uh-oh. Now, I didn't have Linda with me, but she had loaded me up with the computer and all the stuff, and I had more notes than I would ever use, but I did use them, and taught all kinds of things. And the Lord had given me a path that I'd used before that I was able to take and pull pieces and put them together. And I was ready to go. And I said, Anthony, how many kids will be at this youth conference? He said, 750 kids and 850 with the pastors and workers that will be there. I'm going, holy mackerel. And if I'm teaching all that time, what are these kids doing? They're sitting there all that time. Good night. Lord, can I hold their attention and communicate in a meaningful way, and they, not have them all go to sleep or all have to go to the bathroom or what? Well, he had all this figured out, but much to my ignorance, because I might have spoken to it stupidly, but he said, we'll take care of it. It'll be okay. You know how they took care of it? The pastors had switches, and they walked up and down the rows, and if somebody started to nod off to sleep, they kept them awake. And if they started having extraneous conversations, a little tap would do it, and they would, it's another country and another way. But the kids were used to it, and they didn't mind. Those hands going up are kids that are receiving the Lord. God just did incredible things in this conference, and we were so blessed with so many coming to Christ, and God moved in terms of calling kids in their lives to serve Him. Very thankful for that. Also, there was another opportunity with this. I was invited to be involved in adjudicating a international music competition, choirs from the churches that brought their kids. And I'm beginning to get an idea. Now, I'd done some of that before, and had been very involved in music, and was a conductor, during high school days, and conducted competitively. So I understood those kind of competitions and knew how to chart them and so forth. But I said, okay, how many judges are there, Anthony? He says, 1. I went, speak yes, but be the one judge for this international competition between all these churches? No way. I think there were 10 churches that were involved that brought choirs with, 40, 50 kids, dressed, bow ties, white shirts, black slacks, girls, and directors. Some of them were dressed like that, but others of them were dressed very African, and they directed very African, up and down and moving around and all kinds of stuff. I said, we got to have another judge. And he said, okay, I got you one. So he got me another judge. So the two of us lived and survived and didn't get ridden out of town.
At the end of the week, Anthony took Dan and he said, Brother Dan, last Sunday was my last Sunday in my church. I'd already told them that I was moving to the other side of town. Now, this is a town of 1.5 million, so it's not a town, it's a large city. But we're starting a new church, and I'm taking only 5 families with me. The old church has elders. They are set up. They're ready to go, and we're starting a new church.
He anticipated my question. You aren't sponsoring a church split. He said, no. I've told them they can't come with me. Only 5 families will come with me. And we'll start another church on the other side of town.
Dan was there when they met together with the first few people. They met on the fairgrounds in a tin shed
that had holes in it, and the tin was rotting. And I went, and a dirt floor. I went, this is not very good, Anthony. I spoke. We closed in prayer. We took a nice picture, and I said, Anthony, you need a better place to meet. He said, yeah, I know, but this is all we've got. I said, what would be better? He said, we could use a tent and a concrete foundation.
So Dan came home from his time with Anthony.
And I'm not Mr. Big Bucks, and I don't have a huge network, but the Lord just said, Dan, take this one on. So
a tent was bought.
Within 2 days after I got home, the money was raised. It was several $1,000s.
Very quickly. I mean, this church started growing, and it started, and then, of course, COVID hit. And during COVID,
it grew during COVID.
They kept going door to door. It was just a blessing. And they added another tent, so they had 2 tents going. Okay, so, our friends in Africa, we literally are some of the oldest people they know. So when COVID hit, they immediately start calling, are you okay? Are you okay?
Mama, Daddy, are you okay?
So we heard from them daily. We still hear from them daily. And when we finally felt comfortable, we decided to go together and to go back and visit. So in 2002, we went, and I got to go. In between, we were online with them all the time. But in 2002, I have to tell you, Anthony made it over to the United States one time. Yes, he finally made it. So here he is at school. Here he is in my office. Mama Linda had to pray with him, of course. And then we went together, my first time to Kenya, to go see how Anthony's doing. Oh, there he is picking us up. Now, Anthony... he says, okay, I'm going to take you on Saturday to see the church because you're too busy on Sunday. I have too many things planned for you.
Because he had us speaking 4 times on Sunday morning.
He is quite the man. Boom. I mean, he is just a bundle of energy. So here's where, he takes us to the building, and this is what's going on. I mean, it's just incredible.
It'll seat 750 to 1,000 people.
And he's still in the tents. So here we are in the tents with him. And here's our first assignment for the day. Interesting working with foreign people, you learn a little bit more each time. Okay, on this trip we learned that he has another brother, Peter, and Peter is well educated here in the United States, and he and his brother have started these churches, and in fact, they have started another association. So he wanted us to meet his brother Peter, so we met Peter, and then we spent the morning with Anthony at his church, and I got to teach the children.
And we took them a communion set, and it was from Grace Baptist here in town.
Church here in town. It was really fun. We put it in a suitcase and took it to them. Anyway, there were 50 kids under this little tent. I counted them real quick to see how many could possibly sit under that tent. And I used my flannel graph. I always carry flannel graph. Old-fashioned, but it's cross-cultural. Kids still love it. And I finished, and Sheila, that's Anthony's wife in the red there, she turns to me and she said, "Oh, Linda, can you give me your flannel graph?" She said, "I have nothing to teach with." And I said, "Oh, Sheila, I can't give you mine." I said, "But I will bring you some." So
you see, these things cost about $1,000 if you can find them.
Yes. So anyway, so I thought, okay, I'll tuck that in my memory, and I started thinking, okay, so here we are still, and Brother Anthony took us to another little church. This is a tiny, you can see it's only 4 chairs across. This is a stall in a mall.
Open market.
Open market, yes. It's
Bud ditches, and we almost got stuck in front of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brand new little church, Pastor Paul there. And there's everybody. They waited for us long after their service was over to meet us. Okay, so we go home, and the church keeps going. This was the roof that went on.
Well, they needed a roof because of the rains, which would come down torrentially there, and compromise the construction they had up. And so we let the need be known, and one of the places we let the need be known was at a church that I started 47 years ago. And within a few weeks of that awareness, they called me and said, "We've got the $8,000. They had passed the hat and raised the you talk about bless my heart that a church that I started years ago built a building and built buildings with and a campus and all that stuff. They're contributing to building another, and the irony of it is the layout and size of the church in Africa is the same size of the layout and size of the church in
our original church. But anyway, these are his evangelists. They go out weekly, and this was a baptism they had. They baptized 20 adults that day. I mean, it just blesses my heart to be involved with Anthony, because they're not sharing sheep. They're winning people to Christ. It's just wonderful. The windows are in, and Anthony calls up and says, "The kids are out of school. Why don't you come do a youth conference?" So we got on a plane again and went in December. So we were only just a couple of months back. And I have to tell you, after being there, I knew of some things that they needed. So I took the largest suitcases I could find, and I stuffed them.
Her back? Leave those suitcases alone. Quit fiddling with the suitcase. No, I got to get every bit of stuff that I can take to the orphans into these suitcases.
Well, we were at a little church up in Bonanza, Oregon, and I told the story about Sheila asking for my flannel graph. And after the service, one of the workers came up to me and she says, "Are you talking about that Betty Lucas stuff?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, come here, back your car up." And she literally raised the garage door, and there was a complete set, the backgrounds, the boards, everything. It was beautiful. And I took it home, boxed it up, found the right size box that would go inside a suitcase, and I took 2 sets. I took one to Sheila and one to another pastor's wife.
So we told this story, and somebody else said, "We got a set of those sitting back in our Sunday school room. We don't use anymore." So we're telling you, if you got, and one more thing. If you have choir robes that you used to use, or any church you used to go to that had a choir, doesn't have a choir, but it's got all these choir robes sitting around,
they need choir
Anthony
robes.
needs 50 choir robes for his new choir in his church.
So here we are just a couple of months ago, and we went to another youth conference. Anthony's new group of church associations, he and Peter, his brother, named it Jesus is Coming Faith Ministry. They have 13 churches now in association. And here's Brother Paul.
And there were 400 kids at this youth conference. And we spoke at another youth conference as well, and there were 400 kids at that youth conference.
Well, every time I sat down, kids came and, want to sit next to you. Of course, they also want to touch your hair. But I carried a set of pictures in my bag with me all the time and would start telling a story. So we had, it was great fun. Now, at the end of the conference, we did a quizzing time with the students to see how they did. We had great fun.
Go back to that picture.
Oh, wait just a second. I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
Okay. I went to the store with Anthony, and he picked out the prizes. Can you guess what that is? Vaseline, you're right.
He said, we were looking at other stuff. We thought this thing, that thing. He says, no, let's give them all the same thing. And we're going, what are you going to give them all the same thing? And how can we afford this? We're going to pay for this. He says, I know exactly what they want. Vaseline.
Yep. And
they were so thrilled. It was amazing.
And in case you're
Have
wondering,
you ever read those internet posts about 107 uses for WD-40?
Yeah.
There's another one about Vaseline. And they know all those uses. So
now,
you can do your hair, you can put it on pimples, you can,
in case you're wondering, how did they manage all these kids? Well, Van showed up with these little mats, and here's the kitchen. 3 rocks in a pot, and I'm serious. I mean, they were incredible cooks.
What's in the 2 pots? One is beans, the other one is rice. Another one could have been cabbage.
Cabbage, lots of cabbage. And it was good. It was very good.
Oh, and the girls immediately had to start doing laundry. Of course, they only have one set of clothes, besides the one that they've got on.
But everything is done with these vans, the public transportation. And I mean, they can get more people in a van than I've ever seen. It was a wonderful time. And then we spent the weekend at the church. Now, I have to show you what's happened at the church. The vinyl on the tents has peeled.
See it delaminating?
You see it delaminating because of the sun?
Equatorial sun and the rains
the wind
and the wind.
And the rain, the storms have destroyed the siding. So they had to literally move into the building. They don't have windows, but and she kept warning me. Sheila kept saying, "Bring a coat, bring a coat." She said,
"Look in the foreground and see the roughness of the concrete pour. It's not finished off at all." And so setting plastic chairs on that is kind of a rodeo ride.
But here's the new choir, and they are so excited about having a choir.
It was thrilling. At the end of the service, I was going to sing a solo, and I went by that spot because the service was getting longer. He said, no, we want you to sing your solo. So I started singing, and it was Gloria. And about that point, they join in. It was so fun. You're being backed up by their choir and worship team, and really a moving experience.
It was 4 years to the day of their first meeting when Dan was with them in the tin shed. So they had a commemoration cake. It was very sweet, very special. Now the kids have taken over the tent, and there's more than 50 kids now. And then we went to visit Pastor Paul, the man that was in the little stall. Well, the owner of the stall moved him out of that one, moved him way down the end to this little tin
And I think was charging
shed.
them more money.
Yeah. So they owned property, but they didn't have a way to meet on their property. So they were still paying rent in this tin shed here. Yes, it was great. Pastor Paul is a wonderful man.
We gave him his first study Bible. And Anthony discipled him. Shasta Bible College, Anthony, and 13 other churches and other men that he's discipling.
So here's their property. We came home and just 3 weeks ago
We went to Steve, Alexander, and Karen's church.
over on the coast.
And in an evening gathering with, 25 people or so, we presented and showed these pictures. And toward the end of it, Steve stood up and he said, God has just spoken to Karen and I. And I had asked Paul, how much would it take for you guys to be able to get something on a property? He said, $2,000. And I shared that need, and I said, that's just for a temporary tin shed that they would meet in. And Steve said, God spoke to Karen and I, and we want to give him $500. Karen and Steve are not wealthy.
Before we left that night, all 2,000 was raised, and we called Anthony the next morning, told him to tell Paul money's coming. And lo and behold, within 3 weeks, here they are. They are in their temporary building. Isn't that incredible? And they even had enough to build latrines. That's a big deal. You don't know.
That is a big deal.
Okay.
But I'm sure it doesn't have a Western toilet.
No. Now, visiting with Brother Anthony this time, we learned another thing. He has another brother in the ministry. This is Brother David and his church. And we went to visit him.
And there's about 450 people in this church now.
This was incredible.
In the middle of nowhere, in the middle of fields, overlooking the great rift, and then a mountain on the other side. The rift that runs from Israel all the way down to South Africa.
Okay, now this is Brother David. And I took this picture. I was sitting on the front row, and I thought, now only in Africa would there be chickens, running around in the back room.
See them in the back room back there?
In the pastor's study, there'd be chickens. Well, I didn't think about it till a minute later. The chickens were for us. They were our pay.
That was our honorarium for the day.
So, one more connection.
We took them to the
Youth conference
and put them in the ministry.
Put them in the ministry, yeah. Brother Anthony has 13 churches now in association, and one of the last churches he has in association is the man right in the middle here. This is Brother Allen. And I bring him up because Anthony is in a graduate program now. He is in class every week. He's on Zoom at Shasta Bible College.
6:30 our time is 5:30 in the morning time for them.
And Alan wanted to join in. So Alan is now online as an auditor in that same class. And also, come to find out, Brother Anthony has a sister whose husband is in the ministry. And he has started auditing Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning New Testament class. And I'm telling you, they have questions every time. Brother Moses, his brother-in-law, wants to stay on the phone on the Zoom line after class, and he's got a question. He wants to ask this question, ask that question. I'm telling you, it's such a blessing to see the ripples, to see one person take.
By the way, this big guy here, you'd never guess his name. Oh. His name is Wilberforce. You remember William Wilberforce with John Newton and the abolitionist movement?
That's his name.
That's his name. But he's a school principal, a government school principal. He's having a great impact.
Well, this is the town that Brother Allen ministers in here, and that's his church. And
they have plans of building a church building, and they want to reach, it's an upper class neighborhood that's being developed. And they will need help with that.
The last connection I want to show you here is I'll back it up. This man in the plaid, his name is Timothy, and he has been a pastor in the slum area of Nairobi for
30 years.
30 years. He has discipled, he thinks, over about 600 men in the ministry now.
Brother Allen has been a part of that too, and he's been involved in discipling 400 men.
He insisted that we come and teach pastors. So he pulled together as many as he could. This is a tiny room that they meet in.
And there are guys outside too, listening in.
We couldn't get them all in. But here's the slum. And he said, okay, next year when you come. So,
Ron, do you see anything in this picture?
we were there at Christmas time.
Santa Claus plays the saxophone
In Kenya.
In Kenya. And Ron plays the saxophone too.
I tell you, it was the funniest thing everywhere we went. Santa Claus had a saxophone with him. Now, the other thing here, this is a family friend of ours there, and Kenyans are tall people. Notice this one family. I mean, they are all tall people. Now, I'm not unfamiliar with tall. This is my granddaughter. She's tall. But Kenyans are really tall. This was our waitress at the hotel.
I told her, we would like to take your picture. You are so pretty. You look like my pretty granddaughter. And you are the African version and she's the American version.
Well, just to tell you, Shasta Bible College has had an influence, and you don't know it until you hear these stories and the connection to the connection to the connection. And the connections are still going and are still there. And you are part of that because of your investment with Shasta Bible College. So we are here today to say thank you.
Yep. So trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not to your own understanding, but acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will direct your path and the path of this church. Do you believe that? Amen. And it's full of blessing. It won't always be easy. You know, the Lord Jesus said, in this world you will have tribulation. The Apostle Paul said, the sufferings of this life are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed. So there's suffering. There's tribulation. We ache and pain, just like everybody else. But with the Lord with us, there is a joy. There is a peace. There's hope. And the Bible is full of that message. And Jesus is there for each of us. And He says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Thank you for so much for allowing us to come and to share. I hope it has been an encouragement to you. It has been to us. Lord, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the young people that have come to Christ in Africa, the young people that are coming to Christ in America. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of that and seeing what you're doing. And Lord, I pray that we might all continue to do whatever we can do to send and to be willing to be sent and to let that going that the Great Commission calls us to be across the street, around the neighborhood. And Lord, I pray for greater outreach from this church in this community and beyond. And Lord, I pray for Pastor today and ask that you would be with him and grant his health. And Lord, strengthen and encourage Pastor Grant and Sheila. And thank you for bringing them to this church. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you all, and God bless.